Every president gets called corrupt by somebody. It's the cheapest word in American politics. So tonight, I'm not calling anyone corrupt, just going to measure it. We're going to build a scale using the presidents that history has already convicted, the ones both left and right agree were corrupt. And we'll drop the last 3 administrations onto that same scale and see exactly where they land. 2 of those names come out cleaner than you've been told. The third is the reason I made this video. So let's get the yardstick out. Ulysses S. Grant, the 1870s credit mobilier, railroad money bribing congressman, the whiskey ring, treasury official skimming millions in liquor taxes. The Belknap affair, his own war secretary taking kickbacks. The twist, Grant didn't pocket anything himself. His sin was loyalty. He kept defending the crooks long after the proof was in. Warren Harding in the 1920s in the Teapot Dome, his interior secretary secretly leased the Navy's oil reserves for bribes and became the first sitting cabinet officer in American history to go to prison for crimes committed in office. For 50 years, Teapot Dome was the word for scandal. Richard Nixon and Watergate, not about money, but power. A break-in, a cover-up, the IRS and FBI turned into weapons against an enemies list. The only president to resign, he reset the word. Corruption stopped being just theft and started meaning the abuse of the office itself. So now we have 2 axes. Grant and Harding stealing money, Nixon abusing power. Hold both in your head because everything from here gets measured against them. Let's start with the one the internet argues about least, honestly, Barack Obama. And I'm not going to wave his controversies away because some of them are serious. Let's actually walk through the real ones. Fast and Furious, Obama's ATF let guns walk across the border to track them up the cartel chain and then lost them. One turned up at a scene where Border Patrol agent Brian Terry was killed, and when Congress demanded documents, Obama asserted executive privilege, and his Attorney General, Eric Holder, became the first sitting cabinet officer in U.S. history held in contempt of Congress. The IRS scandal, an inspector general found the agency had used inappropriate criteria, flagging groups with words like Tea Party and Patriot for extra scrutiny on their tax-exempt applications. Here's the honest part both sides skip. Investigations found no evidence the White House directed it. Some left-leaning groups also got flagged too, and the Justice Department closed the case without charges. A real bureaucratic abuse, but not the top-down political weapon it was sold as. And then the one that actually should weigh on you, the drone program. Obama dramatically expanded targeted killing, and in 2011, he authorized a strike that killed Anwar al-Awlaki, an American citizen with no trial, no charge, no court. 2 weeks later, a separate strike killed his 16-year-old son, Abdul Rahman, also an American citizen born in Denver, and one the government never even accused of terrorism. A federal judge later dismissed the family's lawsuit, calling the question serious but the territory off limits to the courts. Add the mass surveillance the Snowden leaks exposed, and a record number of leak prosecutions under the Espionage Act, more than every previous administration combined. And the press freedom groups were not wrong to be alarmed. In Benghazi, the 2012 attack that killed 4 Americans, including Ambassador Chris Stevens. The investigations, even the Republican-led ones, found real security failures, but no cover-up, and no wrongdoing by Obama himself. So let me be straight, this is a real list. And the drone strikes in particular are as grave a civil liberties question as anything in this video. I'm not minimizing it. But look at the kind of thing it is. War powers, secrecy, bureaucratic overreach, policy you can hate. Not one of them is Obama enriching himself, and not one is using the government's machinery to reward his own people. On the abuse of power axis, he has genuine entries. On the corruption axis, money, self-dealing, paying his loyalists, he lands 0. And hold on to that distinction because it's the whole game when we get to the end. But none of that is what people actually mean when they call Obama divisive. So let's deal with the real charge head on. They point to 2 moments. Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown. After the acquittal, Obama walked into the briefing room and said, "Trayvon Martin could have been me 35 years ago." He talked about being followed in stores, hearing car locks click as he passed, and that's not a call to arms. That's a man describing his own life. Ferguson, watch how carefully he threaded it. He said there is never an excuse for violence against police and no excuse for police using excessive force on peaceful protesters. And when the riots came, he said flatly he had no sympathy for people destroying their own communities. He called for calm. That is a president de-escalating on both sides. If that's the most divisive thing on the tape, then the tape exonerates him. And look, could he have worded some things more carefully? Sure, maybe. I'm not going to pretend the man was flawless behind the mic, but the divisive crowd never has to answer one question. Divisive compared to what? Let me be fair, because fair is how you win this. Plenty of opposition to Obama was just opposition. People hated the Affordable Care Act. That's politics, not racism. And I won't insult you by pretending otherwise. But then there's the one thing with no policy explanation. For years, a movement insisted the first black president was secretly born in another country, that he wasn't a real American. There's no tax policy in that. It was about delegitimizing his right to be there at all. And the loudest, most relentless promoter of that conspiracy, who made it his launch pad, who kept it up for years until grudgingly admitting in 2016 that Obama was born in Hawaii, that was Donald Trump. Now, I can hear your objection. That's Trump. You can't pin that on regular Republican voters. To that, I say fair. So let's not assert it. Let's count it. In 2011, the CBS News New York Times poll asked where Obama was born. 45% of Republicans said another country. Then he releases the long-form birth certificate. Case closed. It wasn't. Even after, about 1 in 4 Republicans still said he was probably or definitely born somewhere else. And the one that ends it, 2017, Obama's out of office and off the ballot. A YouGov poll, 51% of Republicans still think he was born in Kenya. Among 2016 Trump voters, 57%. There's no policy hiding in that belief. It survived the evidence, and it survived him leaving office because it was never about evidence. It was about whether he counted as a real American. A majority of the base kept saying no. Maybe you think polls are noisy, so go to the people who study this. Political scientists Tesla and Sears found the 2008 election was the most polarized by racial attitudes of any presidential election on record. Racial resentment predicted opposition to his health care plan, his Supreme Court pick, and one experiment, even whether people liked his dog when told it was his. And the timing kills just the partisanship excuse. April 2009, his first 100 days before Republicans turned on him en masse, Pew found a 70-point approval gap between strong racial liberals and strong racial conservatives, larger than any of his 5 predecessors. Now, I want to be exact because precision is the difference between an argument and a smear. This doesn't prove every Obama opponent acted out of hatred. The researchers are careful about that, and so am I. What it proves is more narrow and frankly worse. For this president, and only this one, your attitudes on race predicted your politics like nothing before him. The opposition got racialized measurably. Now, Joe Biden. And here, I have to be careful because the honest answer is messier than either side wants. The central allegation is family influence peddling. While Joe was vice president during the Obama years, 2014 and 2019, his son Hunter landed a board seat at a Ukrainian energy company, Burisma, reportedly worth around $1 million a year. Hunter had no background in energy. What he had was a last name. And it didn't stop there. Republican investigators alleged that, all told, the Biden family and their associates pulled in over $20 million from foreign sources in Ukraine, China, and Romania. Now, that sounds like a smoking gun. So let me do the thing that people who throw that number around never do. Break it down honestly. When investigators traced the money, most of it, around $14 million, went to associates, not the family. Roughly 5 million reached Biden family members, and most of it to Hunter. And the part that matters most, there was no evidence any of it went to Joe Biden, and no evidence of wrongdoing by Joe himself. And in fairness, real fairness, not the backhanded kind, the most likely story is the least dramatic one. A father in the most demanding job in government, whose adult son was quietly cashing in on the family name without him running the deals. Investigators documented Joe showing up to the dinners, shaking hands with Hunter's associates. But Dad came to dinner is not Dad moved the money. For all the meetings they cataloged, they never put Joe in the room where the money changed hands. The simplest read is that Hunter sold proximity to his father, and his father probably never knew the half of it. They also never proved the headline claim that Joe changed U.S. policy for any of it. The viral version, that we forced out a Ukrainian prosecutor to protect Burisma, was debunked. He was carrying out the official anti-corruption policy of the U.S., the EU, and the IMF. What is documented, Hunter Biden was convicted of a gun and tax charges, and then his father pardoned him. That's genuinely a bad look, and I'm not dressing that up. A president pardoning his own son is exactly the thing we'd hammer anyone for. So where does Biden land? Higher than Obama. Real money moving on the family name, a son who traded on it, a pardon that stinks. But still without the one thing that defines the Hall of Shame, proof the president enriched himself through the office. Sit with how fair that was, because here is where it stops being close. Here's my thesis, and I'm going to earn it. By the metrics we can measure right now, Donald Trump's presidency represents self-enrichment through the office on a scale with no modern parallel. That is not a I don't like him measure, this is just documented facts. First 6 months of his second term, the Watchdog crew counts 99 visits to his own properties, 62 to his own golf courses. Political committees spent over $900,000 at Trump-branded properties between his inauguration and that August. Money flowing past the office into the family business. Some of his own PAC fundraisers reportedly went for $1 million a plate. The difference from Grant isn't that graft exists, it's that Grant hid it. This is cash register sitting in the open. Then crypto, a 2026 House Oversight report citing the New York Times estimate figured his family's crypto ventures added as much as $7.1 billion to their net worth. Treat that as an estimate on screen. But even the conservative version dwarfs anything Albert Fall could dream of. The abuse of power axis, now the other axis. Since the start of his second term, at least 15 former officials or associates convicted of or charged with corruption received presidential pardons. In the Justice Department's Public Integrity section, the unit whose whole job is prosecuting public corruption was gutted after leadership ordered a case against the mayor of New York dismissed, triggering a wave of resignations. Nixon weaponized the agencies. This is the next step, neutralizing the agency built to catch people like you, adding 2 impeachments in the first term. And yes, the Senate acquitted both times. I'll come back to that. And you're not on one axis of the scale, you're on both. And then, while I was finishing this very video, came the one that ties it all together. May 2026, Trump's Justice Department announces a fund, not a small one, $1.776 billion, the anti-weaponization fund. On paper, it pays people who say they were unfairly targeted by the Biden Justice Department. Now follow the money, because the structure is the scandal. Trump had sued the IRS for $10 billion over the leak of his tax returns. To settle that suit, his own Justice Department agreed to create this fund. Read that again. The president sued the federal government, the same government he runs. His own DOJ settled the case, and his own Treasury will write the checks. Legal experts called it unprecedented because it is. It's a man settling a lawsuit with himself, using your money. And in fairness, under the terms, Trump himself can't draw from the fund, and he dropped a separate $230 million personal claim. So this isn't him pocketing the $1.776 billion. What it is a treasury-funded pool to pay his allies, and that's where it turns dark. Because his administration won't rule out who qualifies. Asked directly whether January 6 defendants could collect, his acting Deputy Attorney General said anybody in this country can apply. Roughly 1,600 people were charged over the Capitol riot. Trump pardoned around 1,500 of them, and reporting says a DOJ official privately predicted the rioters would get millions. Sit with that. Taxpayer money, potentially millions of it, flowing to people convicted of assaulting police officers on January 6th. People who stormed the Capitol to overturn an election. And here's what should stop you cold. The election that they were trying to overturn in 2020 was tested in court. Dozens of cases, rejected every time, for lack of evidence of fraud. And now a year and a half into a second term, with the full power of the federal government in his hands, and his own DOJ running an investigation built to prove that conspiracy, they produce nothing. The reporting on his own weaponization probe notes no charges have been brought, and it's not clear any ever will be. You don't reward people for stopping a crime that after 5 years and all the power in the world, you still can't prove ever happened. Unless the payout, what's the point? To be fair to the other side, Biden's Attorney General Merrick Garland always denied the department was weaponized and noted his own DOJ prosecuted Biden's son and investigated Biden himself. And critics, including more than 90 members of Congress, called the fund a slush fund, and then already moving to challenge it in court. But whatever you call it, the mechanism is the same. The man who runs the government is using the government's money to pay the people who fought for him. That's not the Grant axis or the Nixon axis. That's both at once. And divisiveness, you already met the birther campaign, and it wasn't alone. In 2019, he told 4 congresswomen of color, 3 of them US born, to go back to the countries they came from. The House formally voted to condemn it. In 2018, reported remarks in a meeting disparaging Haiti and African nations while preferring immigrants from places like Norway. In 1989, full-page ads calling for the death penalty for 5 Black and Latino teens, the Central Park 5. After they were exonerated, he kept suggesting they were guilty. In 2015, he launched his campaign calling Mexican immigrants criminals and rapists. So here's where they land. Obama, real overreach on the power axis, drones, surveillance, but near zero on money, with no self-enrichment to show for it. Biden is higher, real allegations, a bad pardon, nothing proven against the president himself. But Trump, documented self-dealing on the Grant-Harding axis and the dismantling of oversight on the Nixon axis. At the same time, I'll be honest with you, history's verdict on Grant and Harding took 50 years to set like concrete. We don't have 50 years yet. So I'm not telling you history is ruled. I'm telling you that by every metric we can measure today, the scale of the money and the breaking of the machinery built to catch it. No modern presidency lands where this one does. Obama and Biden aren't close. And the people who tell you otherwise are usually the ones who don't want you looking at the receipts. Look at the receipts. Something else I need to be honest about. I use Claude to help research and write the script. Now this part here is all me. No one trusts the government. I don't trust the government any more than the next man should. But what are we supposed to do? Not vote, not voice our opinions. Unfortunately, it seems we are always having to choose between the lesser of 2 evils. But what I do know is that we can't turn a blind eye to a leader just because we voted for them. The only way we can get to a more perfect union is if we start to hold our leaders' feet to the fire when they do something we don't like. And no matter how you want to slice and dice the policies or whatever unfounded conspiracies you want to come up with, some things cannot be more clear. I don't like that Obama expanded surveillance, but that's a policy issue. Both parties are complicit in that. I don't like that Joe Biden pardoned his son. but at least he didn't stop his DOJ from investigating him. And at the end of the day, he didn't get charged for sitting on the board of Burisma. He got charged for tax evasion and a gun. So obviously, the right didn't see Burisma as a big deal. But compare the $5 million Hunter got to the $620 million that Don Jr. is getting, or the $26 million Eric is getting from our tax dollars, and the estimated $7 billion in crypto that Trump amassed while sitting in office. So if you're not going to care about that, then stop caring about Biden and Obama, because on paper, what's documented is beyond what either of them have been alleged to have done. That's my piece. Stay focused.